The stagecoach rattled into Gold Hill, Nevada, on a blistering August afternoon in 1876, carrying Thea Owens and the shattered remnants of her courage because the man waiting at the station had sent 3 letters demanding to know if she had been married before, and she had lied every single time. Dust coated everything in this silver mining town, perched in the hills, from the wooden buildings that looked ready to slide down the slopes to the grim faces of the men who stopped their work to stare at the stage. Thea pressed one gloved hand against her stomach, feeling the familiar twist of anxiety that had plagued her throughout the long journey from Missouri. She was 24 years old, a widow for 2 years, and about to meet the rancher who thought he was getting an innocent young woman instead of someone who had already buried a husband. The stage lurched to a stop, and the driver called out that they had arrived. Thea gathered her worn carpetbag and stepped down onto the dusty street, her dark blue traveling dress already showing the grime of the journey. She searched the faces of the men gathered near the station, looking for Charles Whitmore, the rancher whose careful, precise letters had promised her security and a fresh start in Nevada. Miss Owens? A tall man with graying hair and a severe expression approached her. He was older than she had expected, perhaps 50, with cold blue eyes that swept over her in a way that made her skin crawl. "I am Charles Whitmore." "Mr. Whitmore." Thea forced herself to smile and extend her hand. "I am pleased to finally meet you." His handshake was brief and impersonal. "You look older than your photograph suggested." The words hit her like a slap. "I assure you, the photograph was taken only last year." He picked up her bag without asking. "We will go to the magistrate tomorrow morning. Tonight you will stay at the boarding house. I have already paid for your room." "Tomorrow?" Thea felt her heart sink. She had hoped for at least a few days to acclimate herself to this strange new place. "So soon?" "I did not bring you all this way to waste time with lengthy courtship, Miss Owens. I need a wife to manage my household and provide me with children. Your letters indicated you understood this arrangement." Something in his tone made her deeply uneasy, but what choice did she have? She had used the last of her savings to make this journey. Her late husband's family had made it clear she was not welcome in Missouri, and there were no respectable jobs for a woman alone. This marriage was her only option. "Of course," she said quietly. "I understand." Whitmore led her down the main street toward a 2-story building with a faded sign reading Murphy's Boarding House. The sun beat down mercilessly, and Thea could feel sweat gathering beneath her collar. Men stood in clusters outside the saloons and shops, their conversations stopping as she passed. She heard the word widow whispered more than once, though she could not imagine how they would already know. At the boarding house, Whitmore deposited her bag in the small front room and turned to leave. "I will collect you at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. Be ready." "Wait," Thea said, desperation making her bold. "Will you not stay and have dinner with me? I thought we might speak, get to know one another. There will be time enough for that after we are married." He paused at the door and looked back at her, his expression calculating. "You are not hiding anything from me, are you, Miss Owens? You answered all my questions truthfully in your letters?" Her throat went dry. "Of course." "Good, because I have no tolerance for deception. A woman who would lie to her future husband is not a woman I would keep." He tipped his hat and left, his boots heavy on the wooden boards. Thea stood in the small room, fighting back tears. The landlady, a stout woman with kind eyes, appeared in the doorway with a pitcher of water and a basin. "Do not mind Mr. Whitmore, dear," she said softly. "He has always been a hard man, but he is wealthy and respectable, which counts for much out here." "Thank you," Thea whispered. She waited until the landlady left before sinking onto the narrow bed and letting the tears come. What had she done? She should have been honest from the beginning, should have told Whitmore about Samuel, about the brief marriage that had ended when fever took him. But she had been so afraid that no man would want a widow, so desperate to escape the pitying looks and cruel whispers back home. She cried herself to sleep that night, dreaming of Samuel's kind smile and gentle hands, so different from Whitmore's cold demeanor. The next morning dawned hot and clear. Thea washed her face, pinned up her auburn hair, and put on her best dress, a modest gray silk that had been her Sunday dress in Missouri. Her hands shook as she fastened the buttons. She was about to commit herself to a man she did not love, did not even like, because she had nowhere else to go. At precisely 8 o'clock, heavy footsteps sounded on the stairs, but it was not Whitmore who appeared in her doorway. Instead, a younger man stood there, holding his hat in his hands. He was perhaps 27 or 28, with dark hair and striking gray eyes. His face was weathered from sun and wind, but handsome in a rugged way that made her breath catch. "Miss Owens?" His voice was deep and warm. "I am Russell Bennett. Mr. Whitmore sent me to tell you that the wedding has been postponed." Relief and confusion warred in her chest. "Postponed? Why?" Russell shifted uncomfortably. "He received information this morning that gave him pause, about your previous marriage." The floor seemed to drop away beneath her feet. "How did he learn about that?" "The telegraph operator in your hometown sent a message to a friend here in Gold Hill. Word travels fast in small towns, madam. By last night, half the town knew you were a widow who had not disclosed that fact to Mr. Whitmore." Shame burned through her. "I see. And Mr. Whitmore has decided he does not want me. That is the sum of it, yes." Russell looked genuinely sympathetic. "He asked me to inform you and to offer to pay for your return journey to Missouri." "How generous of him!" Thea said bitterly. She sank down onto the bed, her carefully constructed future crumbling around her. "I cannot go back to Missouri. There is nothing for me there." "Do you have other family? Friends who might take you in?" "No." The word came out as barely more than a whisper. "I am alone." Russell stood there for a long moment, clearly uncertain what to do. Finally, he stepped into the room, though he left the door properly open. "If you do not mind my asking, why did you not tell him the truth from the start?" Thea looked up at him, seeing genuine curiosity rather than judgment in his eyes. "Because I thought no man would want a widow. I thought my past would make me undesirable." "That is foolish thinking," Russell said quietly. "A widow is not damaged goods, Miss Owens. A widow is someone who has loved and lost, who understands the value of commitment. There is no shame in that." His words, so unexpected and kind, broke through her carefully maintained composure. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "The people in my hometown did not see it that way. They said I was unlucky, that I might bring misfortune to another man. Samuel's family blamed me for his death, though he died of fever, and there was nothing I could have done." Russell crossed the room and handed her his handkerchief. "People can be cruel and small-minded. But not everyone thinks that way. Apparently, Mr. Whitmore does. Whitmore is a particular case." Russell's jaw tightened. He wants everything in his life to be pristine and perfect, including his wife. The truth is, you are better off not marrying him. He would have made you miserable. "Perhaps," Thea admitted, dabbing at her eyes. "But at least I would have had a roof over my head and food to eat. Now I have nothing." "How much money do you have left?" The question was indelicate, but Thea was too exhausted to care about propriety. $3.27. Enough for perhaps a week at this boarding house if I eat sparingly." Russell was quiet for a moment, his gray eyes thoughtful. When he spoke again, his words were careful. "I run a cattle ranch about 5 miles outside of town. It is not a large operation, just me and 2 hired hands, but it is profitable enough. My house is too big for one person, and I have been thinking about hiring someone to help with the cooking and cleaning. The work would be hard, but I could offer you room and board plus $15 a month. It would give you time to figure out your next step, at least." Thea stared at him. "You would hire me, even knowing that I am a widow?" Especially knowing that, Russell said. Widows know how to run a household. You would have your own room, of course, and I would expect nothing from you except honest work. What do you say? It was improper, possibly scandalous, for an unmarried woman to live on a ranch with an unmarried man. But what choice did she have? The alternative was to starve on the streets of Gold Hill or use her last dollars to buy passage back to Missouri, where she would face the same contempt and rejection that had driven her away in the first place. I accept, she said. Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Call me Russell. We do not stand on too much ceremony out here. He smiled, and it transformed his serious face into something warm and inviting. Can you be ready to leave in an hour? I need to pick up supplies, and then we will head out to the ranch. Yes, thank you again. I do not know what I would have done if you had not come. You would have figured something out, Russell said. You are stronger than you think, Miss Owens. After he left, Thea sat for a long moment, trying to process the sudden turn her life had taken. This morning she had been prepared to marry a cold, severe man who saw her as nothing more than a useful object. Now she was going to work as a housekeeper for a cowboy who seemed to think there was nothing wrong with being a widow. The world had shifted beneath her feet again, but this time, perhaps the shift was for the better. She packed her few belongings and went downstairs to settle her account with the landlady, who gave her a knowing look. So you are going out to the Bennett Ranch, the older woman said. Russell is a good man, one of the best in these parts. He will treat you fairly. Do you think it is terribly improper? Thea asked quietly. The landlady shrugged. This is Nevada territory, dear. We do not have the luxury of being as particular about propriety as they are back east. A woman has to survive, and honest work is nothing to be ashamed of. Besides, Russell's ranch hands live on the property too. It is not as though you will be alone with him. The reassurance helped ease some of Thea's anxiety. She waited outside the boarding house, her carpetbag at her feet, until Russell pulled up in a wagon loaded with supplies. He jumped down to help her up onto the seat, his hand warm and steady on her elbow. All set? He asked. Yes. They rode out of Gold Hill in comfortable silence. The road wound through hills dotted with sagebrush and pinyon pine, and in the distance, Thea could see the purple shadows of mountains. The heat was intense, but there was something clean and vast about this landscape that called to her. In Missouri, she had always felt hemmed in by trees and memories. Here the sky stretched endlessly overhead, and it seemed possible to become someone new. How long have you had your ranch? She asked after a while. 5 years. I came west after the war and worked as a hired hand for several years, saving every penny. When the owner of the ranch decided to sell and move back to California, I bought the land and the cattle. It has been hard work building it up, but I love it. Were you in the war? The question was presumptuous, but she was curious about this man who had rescued her. Yes, I was at Gettysburg. His voice had gone flat, and she knew instinctively not to press further on that subject. My husband was too young to fight, she said softly. He was only 18 when we married, 19 when he died. Sometimes I think he was too young for everything that happened to him. Russell glanced at her. How long were you married? Only 8 months. We were childhood friends, and when his family decided to move to Ohio, he asked me to marry him so I could go along. I think he wanted familiar company more than he wanted a wife. We cared for each other, but it was not a grand passion. She paused, surprised at her own honesty. Is that terrible to admit? No, Russell said, it is honest. Not every marriage is a love match, especially out here. Sometimes partnership and mutual respect are enough. That is what I thought I would have with Mr. Whitmore, Thea admitted. I was not expecting love, just security and perhaps kindness. But he did not even offer that much. Whitmore does not have kindness in him, Russell said. His first wife died in childbirth 10 years ago, and instead of mourning her, he seemed annoyed by the inconvenience. He wants a woman who will run his house and warm his bed and demand nothing from him emotionally. You deserve better than that. The matter-of-fact way he said it made her cheeks warm. You do not even know me. I know you were brave enough to come all this way alone, hoping for a better life. I know you loved your first husband enough to mourn him properly. And I know you had the courage to be honest with me just now, even though that honesty reveals vulnerability. That is enough for me to know you deserve respect and decent treatment. Thea found she had no response to that. They rode in silence for a while longer, and then the ranch came into view. It was modest, but well-maintained, with a sturdy two-story house, a large barn, and several outbuildings. Cattle grazed in the fields beyond, and she could see two men working near the corral. Russell helped her down from the wagon and called out to the men. They approached, dusty and curious. This is Miss Thea Owens, Russell said. She will be helping with the house and cooking. Thea, this is Jack Murphy and Tom Dawson. The two men tipped their hats politely. Jack was young, perhaps 22, with a sunburned face and a friendly grin. Tom was older, weathered and lean, with sharp eyes that assessed her carefully. Pleased to meet you, madam, Jack said. Russell's cooking has been like to kill us, so we are grateful for the help. Despite her anxiety, Thea found herself smiling. I will do my best to keep you all well fed. Russell showed her into the house, which was larger than she had expected. The main room served as both kitchen and living area, with a big stone fireplace and a sturdy table. The furniture was simple but well made. Stairs led to the second floor, where Russell showed her to a small but clean bedroom with a window overlooking the fields. This will be yours, he said. My room is at the other end of the hall, and Jack and Tom sleep in the bunkhouse out back. The door has a lock if you want privacy. Thank you. Thea set down her bag and looked around the room. It was sparse, with just a bed, a washstand, and a chest of drawers, but it was hers, a place where she could close the door and breathe. I will start on dinner as soon as I settle in. Take your time, Russell said. I know today has been difficult. After he left, Thea unpacked her few belongings and changed into a simpler cotton dress suitable for housework. She found herself studying her reflection in the small mirror above the washstand. Her face was pale despite the heat, her green eyes shadowed with exhaustion and lingering anxiety. But she was here. She was safe. And for the first time since Samuel's death, someone had treated her as though being a widow was not a mark of shame. She went downstairs and explored the kitchen, taking stock of the supplies. There was plenty of flour, cornmeal, beans, and salted pork, along with eggs from the chickens she could hear clucking outside. She set about making biscuits and gravy with fried eggs, simple fare but hearty enough for working men. As she worked, she found herself relaxing into the familiar rhythms of cooking. This was something she knew how to do, something that made sense. By the time the sun was lowering toward the horizon, she had dinner ready and the table set. Russell came in first, washing up at the basin by the door. His shirt was sweat-stained and dusty, and there was a smudge of dirt on his cheek. He looked tired but content, and when he saw the table laid out with food, his face lit up with genuine pleasure. This looks wonderful, he said. You did not have to go to so much trouble on your first day. It is what you are paying me for, Thea replied, but she could not help smiling at his enthusiasm. Jack and Tom came in next, their eyes widening at the sight of real biscuits and gravy instead of the burned beans and tough bacon they had apparently been subsisting on. They ate with single-minded focus, complimenting her cooking between bites. Best meal I have had in months, Tom said, sopping up gravy with his third biscuit. You are a treasure, Miss Owens. Just Thea is fine, she said. Out here, surrounded by honest working men who treated her with respect, the formality seemed unnecessary. That first evening set the pattern for the days that followed. Thea rose early to make breakfast, pack lunches for the men, and spent her days cleaning, mending, and preparing dinner. The work was hard, harder than anything she had done in Missouri, but it was satisfying in a way her old life had never been. Here she could see the results of her labor in the clean floors, the mended shirts, the hearty meals that kept the men strong and healthy. Russell proved to be an ideal employer. He was respectful without being distant, friendly without being improper. He asked her opinion on household matters and listened when she suggested improvements. When she mentioned that a proper vegetable garden would improve their meals, he immediately set Jack to plowing a plot near the house and rode into Gold Hill to buy seeds. In the evenings, after dinner was cleared away, the four of them often sat on the porch in the cooling air. Jack would play his harmonica, and Tom would tell stories about his years as a prospector in California. Russell usually sat quietly, whittling or mending tack, but sometimes he would share stories too, tales of building the ranch or learning to work with cattle. Thea found herself watching Russell more than she should. She noticed the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the careful way he handled injured animals, the patience he showed when teaching Jack a new skill. He was nothing like Samuel, who had been boyish and impulsive. Russell was a man fully grown, steady and strong, and she felt drawn to him in a way that both excited and frightened her. 3 weeks after her arrival, she was in the vegetable garden pulling weeds when she heard a horse approaching. She looked up to see a woman riding up to the house, elegant, in a green riding habit despite the dust. The woman dismounted gracefully and tied her horse before approaching Thea. "You must be the widow," the woman said. Her voice was cultured, with a hint of a southern accent. "I am Virginia Whitmore, Charles's sister." Thea got to her feet, wiping her dirty hands on her apron. "I am Thea Owens. Yes, the woman who lied to my brother." Virginia's blue eyes were cold. "You caused quite a scandal, you know. Charles was humiliated when the truth came out." "I apologize for any embarrassment I caused," Thea said stiffly. "But your brother made his choice clear, and I have moved on." "Moved on to Russell Bennett, it seems." Virginia looked her up and down with obvious disdain. "Do you have any idea what people are saying? That you are living here in sin? That you have entrapped a good man with your wiles?" Anger sparked in Thea's chest. "I am employed here as a housekeeper, nothing more. My relationship with Mr. Bennett is entirely proper." "Proper?" Virginia laughed. "A brittle sound. There is nothing proper about an unmarried woman living on a ranch with an unmarried man. You may have fooled Russell, but you do not fool me. You are a scheming creature who came west to trap a husband, and when Charles saw through you, you found another target. That is enough." Russell's voice cut through the air like a whip. He strode across the yard, his face dark with anger. "You will not speak to Thea that way on my property, Virginia." "Russell, I am only trying to protect you," Virginia said, her tone immediately softening. "This woman is not what she seems. This woman is honest and hard-working, which is more than I can say for your brother," Russell said flatly. "Charles wanted a servant he could bed, not a wife. Thea is better off here, where she is treated with respect." Virginia's face flushed. "You are making a mistake. Everyone in Gold Hill is talking about you both." "Let them talk," Russell said. "Now, if you will excuse us, we have work to do." Virginia remounted her horse with tight, angry movements. Before riding away, she looked down at Thea and said, "You will regret this. Mark my words." After she left, Thea stood trembling with reaction. Russell put a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Do not let her poison get to you," he said quietly. "She is angry because Charles is angry, and they both hate to be thwarted." "Is it true?" Thea asked. "Is everyone in town talking about us?" Russell hesitated. "Some people are talking, yes. But the ones whose opinions matter know that nothing improper is happening here." But the seed of doubt had been planted. That night, Thea lay awake in her narrow bed, staring at the ceiling. She had thought she was building a new life here. But what if Virginia was right? What if her presence was damaging Russell's reputation? He had been nothing but kind to her, and she was repaying him by making him the subject of gossip. The next morning at breakfast, she said, "Russell, perhaps I should look for other employment. I do not want to cause you trouble." He looked up from his eggs. surprise on his face. What brought this on? What Virginia said yesterday. If people are talking, if my being here is hurting your standing in the community, do I look like a man who cares what Charles Whitmore's sister thinks? Russell set down his fork. Thea, you have done nothing wrong. You are working hard and earning your keep. Anyone who chooses to see something improper in that says more about their own minds than about reality. But still, no. His voice was firm but not unkind. I will not let small-minded gossip drive away someone who has become important to this ranch. You are staying unless you want to leave for your own reasons. I do not want to leave, Thea admitted softly. Then that is settled. Russell returned to his breakfast, and the subject was closed, but Thea could not shake her unease. Over the next few weeks, whenever she went into Gold Hill for supplies, she felt eyes following her. Some people were openly hostile, while others simply looked away. The only person who remained friendly was the landlady from the boarding house, who made a point of greeting Thea warmly whenever she saw her. Do not mind the busybodies, the older woman said one afternoon as Thea was buying fabric for new curtains. They will find something else to gossip about soon enough. Besides, half of them are just jealous. Jealous? Thea was genuinely confused. Russell Bennett is one of the most eligible bachelors in the territory, dear. Plenty of women have set their caps at him over the years. The fact that you are living under his roof, even as his housekeeper, makes you the object of their envy. Thea had not considered that perspective. She finished her shopping and headed back to the ranch, her mind churning. Did people really think she was trying to trap Russell into marriage? And more importantly, was she developing feelings that went beyond those of an employee for her employer? The answer came to her a few days later. She was hanging laundry on the line behind the house when she heard a sharp cry from the direction of the barn. She dropped the shirt she was holding and ran toward the sound, her heart pounding. Inside the barn, she found Jack on the ground, clutching his leg. Russell and Tom were nowhere to be seen, probably out checking the herd. Blood seeped between Jack's fingers, and his face was pale with shock. What happened? Thea dropped to her knees beside him. Stupid, Jack gasped. Was fixing the stall gate, and it fell on me. There is a nail sticking through my leg. Thea forced herself to stay calm. Let me see. The wound was bad, the rusty nail driven deep into Jack's thigh. She knew it needed to come out, but pulling it free would cause more bleeding, and there was always the risk of infection from a dirty nail. She needed help. Can you stand? She asked. Jack tried, but immediately cried out in pain. The nail had gone through his leg and was still attached to a piece of the gate, effectively pinning him to the ground. Stay still, Thea commanded. She looked around frantically and spotted a hacksaw hanging on the wall. Moving quickly, she sawed through the wooden board, freeing Jack from the gate though the nail was still embedded in his leg. Then, with strength she did not know she possessed, she helped him hobble to the house and onto the kitchen table. She had just finished gathering clean cloths and water when Russell burst through the door, his face white with alarm. I saw you running from the house, he said. What happened? Jack was injured. I need your help to remove the nail and clean the wound. Russell took one look at Jack's ashen face and immediately moved into action. Together they pulled the nail free, packed the wound with clean cloth to stop the bleeding, and wrapped Jack's leg tightly. Thea dosed the young man with whiskey for the pain and made him comfortable on the sofa while Russell rode for the doctor in Gold Hill. By the time the doctor arrived, Jack's bleeding had stopped and the immediate danger was past. The doctor examined Thea's work and nodded approvingly. You did well, Miss Owens, he said. Quick thinking, and steady hands probably saved this boy's leg. After the doctor left and Jack was sleeping off the whiskey, Russell found Thea in the kitchen. She was washing the blood from her hands, and they shook so badly she could barely grip the soap. Russell gently took the soap from her and finished washing her hands himself, his touch careful and warm. You were remarkable today, he said softly. Most people would have panicked, But you stayed calm and did what needed to be done. I was terrified, Thea admitted, but someone had to act. That is what courage is, not the absence of fear, but acting despite it. Russell dried her hands with a towel, his gray eyes locked on hers. Thea, I need to tell you something. Her heart hammered in her chest. What is it? When I saw you running from the house looking frightened, I felt something I have not felt in years. Terror at the thought of you being in danger. And it made me realize that you have become more to me than just an employee. Thea's breath caught. Russell, I cannot. Let me finish. His hands still held hers, warm and steady. I know you came here running from a failed marriage arrangement. I know you have been hurt and disappointed. I am not asking you for anything you are not ready to give, but I want you to know that when I look at you, I do not see a widow or someone damaged or unlucky. I see a woman who is brave and kind and strong, a woman I am falling in love with. Tears welled in Thea's eyes. I am falling in love with you too, she whispered. But I am so afraid. What if something happens to you? What if I lose you like I lost Samuel? Life does not come with guarantees, Russell said. Samuel died, and that was a tragedy. But would you rather have never known him at all? Never had those 8 months of companionship and care? No, Thea admitted. Even though losing him hurt terribly, I would not trade away the time we had. Then take a chance on this, on us. Russell lifted her hands to his lips and kissed them gently. I cannot promise I will never die or never leave you, but I can promise I will love you with everything I have for as long as I live. Thea looked into his eyes and saw nothing but sincerity and warmth. This was not the boyish infatuation Samuel had offered, nor the cold transaction Whitmore had proposed. This was a mature love offered by a man who understood loss and still chose to risk his heart. Yes, she said. Yes, I will take that chance. Russell pulled her into his arms, and she rested her head against his chest, hearing the steady beat of his heart. For the first time since Samuel's death, she felt truly safe. Not because Russell promised nothing bad would ever happen, but because she knew that whatever came, they would face it together. They stood there in the kitchen, holding each other as the afternoon light slanted through the windows. Finally, Russell pulled back just enough to look down at her face. I want to do this properly, he said. Will you marry me, Thea Owens? Not because you need security or because I need a housekeeper, but because I love you and I want to spend my life with you? Yes, Thea said, smiling through her tears. Yes, I will marry you. He kissed her then, gentle and sweet, a kiss full of promise and hope. When they finally broke apart, both were smiling. When? Thea asked. As soon as you want. Tomorrow, if that would make you happy. She laughed. Perhaps we should wait at least a few weeks. Give people time to adjust to the idea. Let them adjust after the wedding, Russell said. I do not want to wait. They compromised on 2 weeks, enough time to arrange a proper ceremony, but not so long that they would go mad with waiting. Thea spent those 2 weeks in a blur of preparation, sewing a new dress with fabric Russell bought for her in Gold Hill, planning a simple reception at the ranch, and trying not to feel guilty about how happy she was. One evening, about a week before the wedding, she was sitting on the porch with Russell when she finally voiced the fear that had been gnawing at her. Do you think people will always see me as the widow who lied to Charles Whitmore? She asked quietly. Russell was silent for a moment, his arm around her shoulders. Some people might. But Thea, being a widow is not something to be ashamed of. You loved Samuel, and he died. That is sad, but it is not shameful. And the fact that you did not want to be defined by that loss, that you wanted a chance to build a new life, that is not shameful either. But I lied. You did, and that was wrong. But you have paid for that mistake many times over. He tightened his arm around her. I am glad Whitmore rejected you, not because you deserved that pain, but because it brought you to me. and I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret that." "I do not regret it," Thea said softly. "I thought I wanted security and respectability, but what I really wanted was to be seen and loved for who I truly am. You gave me that." "You gave it to me too," Russell said. "I was so focused on building this ranch, on proving I could make something of myself, that I forgot what it felt like to want to share my life with someone. You reminded me." They sat together as the stars came out, making quiet plans for their future. They talked about expanding the house, about the children they hoped to have someday, about growing old together on this land they both loved. And for the first time in years, Thea allowed herself to believe that happiness was not just a fleeting dream, but something she could actually hold on to. The day before the wedding, Virginia Whitmore appeared at the ranch again. This time Thea was ready for her. "I heard you are marrying Russell," Virginia said coldly. "I suppose you got what you wanted after all." "I am marrying a man I love," Thea replied calmly, "and who loves me in return. That is more than I ever hoped for." "You do not deserve him." "Perhaps not, but he has chosen me anyway, just as I have chosen him." Thea met Virginia's angry gaze without flinching. "You came here to hurt me, but you cannot. Nothing you say can touch the happiness I have found." Virginia's face twisted with frustration. "Everyone knows what you are, a fortune hunter who entrapped a good man. If they know me at all, they know I worked hard for every penny Russell paid me. They know I helped save Jack's life when he was injured. They know I am marrying Russell because we love each other, not because of his property or his money." Thea stepped closer, her voice firm. "But more importantly, I know the truth, and so does Russell. Your opinion and your brother's opinion, and the opinion of every gossip in Gold Hill means nothing compared to that." Virginia stared at her for a long moment, then turned and left without another word. Thea watched her ride away, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. She had spent so long worrying about what other people thought, letting their judgments shape her choices. But no more. She was going to marry the man she loved, and nothing else mattered. The wedding took place on a sunny September morning at the small church in Gold Hill. Thea wore her new dress, a simple but elegant design in cream-colored silk with wildflowers in her hair that Russell had picked for her that morning. Jack stood up as Russell's best man, his leg healed enough that he could walk without crutches. The landlady from the boarding house stood up for Thea, beaming with happiness. The ceremony was simple and brief. Thea found herself fighting tears as she repeated her vows, promising to love and honor Russell for the rest of her life. When Russell slipped the ring onto her finger, a simple gold band he had bought with money saved carefully over months, she knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. "I now pronounce you man and wife," the minister said. "You may kiss your bride." Russell pulled her close and kissed her thoroughly, to the cheers and applause of the small gathering. When they broke apart, both were smiling so widely their faces hurt. The reception at the ranch was modest but joyful. Tom had roasted a pig, and several neighboring ranchers came with their families, bringing food and congratulations. Even some of the people from town who had gossiped about Thea came to the wedding, apparently willing to accept her now that she was respectably married. As the sun set and lanterns were lit around the yard, Russell pulled Thea into a dance. She rested her head on his shoulder, breathing in the scent of him, feeling the solid warmth of his body against hers. "Happy?" he murmured into her hair. "Happier than I ever thought possible," she replied honestly. "Good, because I plan to make you even happier." That night, alone in Russell's bedroom, which was now their bedroom, Thea experienced a tenderness and passion she had never known with Samuel. Russell was patient and gentle, taking his time to learn what pleased her, murmuring words of love and encouragement. When they finally came together, it was not just a physical joining, but an emotional and spiritual one. Afterward, they lay tangled together, talking quietly until they fell asleep in each other's arms. The months that followed were the happiest of Thea's life. She threw herself into making the ranch house a real home, sewing curtains and quilts, planting flowers around the porch, cooking meals that became locally famous. Russell expanded his herd and bought more land, building the ranch into a prosperous operation. They worked side by side, partners in every sense of the word. By spring, Thea realized she was pregnant. She told Russell one evening after dinner, watching his face carefully for his reaction. His eyes widened, then filled with tears of joy. "A baby," he said wonderingly. "We are going to have a baby." "Are you happy?" Thea asked, though she could see the answer on his face. Happy does not begin to cover it. Russell pulled her into his arms, holding her carefully as though she might break. "I love you so much. Thank you for this gift." The pregnancy was not easy. Thea suffered from terrible sickness in the early months, and the summer heat made her miserable. But Russell was attentive and supportive, taking over many of her household duties without complaint. Jack and Tom also stepped up, treating her with gentle concern that made her feel deeply cared for. In November, on a cold night, with snow falling softly outside, Thea went into labor. The doctor arrived from Gold Hill just as her contractions were becoming intense. Russell stayed by her side through the long hours of labor, holding her hand and wiping her forehead with cool cloths. "I cannot do this," Thea gasped at one point, exhausted and hurting. "Yes, you can," Russell said firmly. "You are the strongest person I know. You can do this." And she did. Just before dawn, their son was born, a healthy baby with a lusty cry and a head full of dark hair like his father's. Russell cut the cord with shaking hands, then took the baby from the doctor and placed him gently in Thea's arms. "He is perfect," Russell said, his voice thick with emotion, "just like his mother." They named him Samuel Russell Bennett, honoring both the past and the present. Little Samuel was a good baby, nursing well and sleeping for long stretches. Thea felt her heart expand in ways she had not known were possible, loving this small person with an intensity that sometimes frightened her. One night, when Samuel was about 3 months old, she woke to find Russell standing over the cradle, watching their son sleep. She slipped out of bed and joined him leaning against his side. "What are you thinking?" she asked softly. "I am thinking about how lucky I am," Russell replied. "A year ago, I was alone, focused only on work. Now I have you and Samuel, a real family. It feels like a dream." "Not a dream," Thea said. "Real, very real." Russell turned to pull her into his arms. "I love you, Thea, more than I thought it was possible to love anyone. I love you too, and I am so grateful that you saw past the gossip and the judgment to the person I really was. You saved me." "No," Russell said gently. "You saved yourself. I just gave you a place to land." As the years passed, their family grew. 2 years after Samuel was born, Thea gave birth to a daughter they named Emma. She had her mother's auburn hair and green eyes and her father's steady temperament. 3 years after Emma came another son, Robert, who was adventurous and mischievous from the moment he could crawl. The ranch prospered too. Russell became known throughout the territory as a fair dealer and skilled rancher. He hired more hands as the operation expanded and built a proper bunkhouse for them. Thea became known for her hospitality, always ready to feed a hungry traveler or provide shelter to someone in need. The gossip about her past gradually faded, replaced by respect for the woman she had become. Even Virginia Whitmore eventually softened, appearing at the ranch one day with a christening gift for Emma. She and Thea would never be friends, but they achieved a sort of polite truce. Charles Whitmore eventually married a woman from California, someone young and biddable who gave him the pristine, perfect household he wanted. Thea saw them occasionally in Gold Hill and felt nothing but relief that she had escaped that fate. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Russell surprised Thea with a trip to San Francisco. They left the children with Tom, who had become like a grandfather to them, and spent a week in the city. They ate in fancy restaurants, went to the theater, and shopped in stores filled with wonders. But Thea's favorite part was simply walking through the city with Russell's arm around her waist, talking and laughing like they had all the time in the world. On their last night in San Francisco, as they sat in their hotel room watching fog roll in from the bay, Russell took her hand. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "Staying in Nevada instead of going back east? Raising our children out here in the wilderness?" Thea thought about the question carefully. Their life was not easy. The winters were harsh, the summers brutal. There were droughts and diseases, accidents and setbacks. But through it all, they had each other. "No," she said honestly. "I do not regret any of it. This is where I was meant to be. With you. Even though you started out as a mail-order bride who was shunned for being a widow." Thea smiled. "Especially because of that. If Whitmore had accepted me, I would have spent my life in a cold, loveless marriage. Being rejected, being judged and gossiped about brought me to you. And you taught me that widows know how to love deep because we have known loss. We understand how precious and fragile happiness is, and we do not take it for granted." "I never took you for granted," Russell said. "No, not for a single day." "I know. That is why I love you." They returned to the ranch refreshed and happy. The children mobbed them at the door, full of stories about what they had done while their parents were away. Samuel, now 10 years old and already tall like his father, had helped Tom fix a fence. Emma, 8 and full of questions, wanted to know everything about San Francisco. 6-year-old Robert had apparently tried to ride one of the calves and ended up in the water trough. That night, after the children were in bed, Thea and Russell sat on the porch in their customary spot, watching the stars come out. The air smelled of sage and dust, familiar and beloved. "Do you remember the day we met?" Thea asked. "When you came to tell me Whitmore had rejected me?" "I remember thinking you were the most beautiful sad creature I had ever seen," Russell said. "And I remember wanting to take away your pain. You did more than that. You gave me a reason to hope again. You did the same for me." Russell pulled her closer. "I was so focused on survival, on building something concrete and lasting, that I had forgotten how to feel. You reminded me what it meant to be alive." "We saved each other then," Thea said. "We did. And we will keep saving each other for the rest of our lives." As they sat there in the comfortable silence of long companionship, Thea reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. She had come to Nevada territory broken and afraid, running from judgment and rejection. She had lied about her past, thinking it made her unworthy of love, but Russell had taught her that her past did not define her. Her widowhood was not a stain, but a testament to her capacity for love. The fact that she had loved and lost made her stronger, not weaker, more capable of appreciating happiness, not less. She thought about Samuel, her first husband, and felt only gentle sadness now, instead of the sharp grief that had once consumed her. He would have wanted her to be happy, to find love again, to build a full and joyful life. And she had done that. The years continued to pass, bringing the inevitable mixture of joy and sorrow. Tom died peacefully in his sleep at the age of 72, and they buried him on a hill overlooking the ranch he had loved. Jack eventually married a girl from Gold Hill and started his own small ranch nearby, but remained close friends with Russell and Thea. Samuel grew into a serious young man who loved the ranch and planned to take it over someday. Emma surprised them all by becoming a teacher, opening a small school in Gold Hill. Robert, true to his adventurous nature, joined the cavalry and sent letters from forts across the West. Through it all, Russell and Thea remained devoted to each other. They still sat on the porch every evening when weather permitted, still talked about everything and nothing, still made each other laugh. Their love deepened and matured, becoming something richer and more complex than the early passion they had felt. On their 25th wedding anniversary, their children threw them a party that drew people from across the territory. The house and yard were packed with friends, neighbors, and business associates. There were speeches and toasts, music and dancing, enough food to feed an army. Late in the evening, after most of the guests had gone home and their children were cleaning up. Russell pulled Thea away from the crowd. They walked down to the corral, where they could be alone, looking up at the star-studded sky. 25 years, Russell said wonderingly. Where did the time go? Into building a life, Thea replied. Into raising children and working hard and loving each other. It went into everything that matters. Do you remember what I said to you that first day? About widows knowing how to love deep? Of course I remember. Those words changed my life. I was right, you know. You love with your whole heart, holding nothing back. You made me want to do the same. Russell turned to face her, taking both her hands. I was half a person before I met you, Thea. You made me whole. You did the same for me. I was so lost, so convinced I was damaged beyond repair. You showed me that my scars were not flaws, but proof that I had survived and could love again. They stood together in the darkness, two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful. The ranch stretched out around them, the land they had nurtured and protected. The house glowed with lamplight, full of their children and the life they had created together. If you could go back, Russell asked suddenly, back to that day when you arrived in Gold Hill expecting to marry Whitmore, would you change anything? Thea thought about it. She thought about the fear and humiliation she had felt when Whitmore rejected her, the uncertainty of accepting Russell's offer of employment, the gossip and judgment she had endured. But she also thought about the love she had found, the family she had built, the woman she had become. No, she said firmly. I would not change a single thing. Every hardship brought me closer to this moment, to you, to the life we share. I would walk that same difficult path 1,000 times if it meant ending up here with you. Russell kissed her then, as tender and loving as the first time he had kissed her in the kitchen all those years ago. When they pulled apart, both had tears in their eyes. Come on, Thea said, taking his hand. Let us go back to the house. Our children will wonder where we have gone. But Russell held her back for a moment. Wait, I need to say something. What is it? Thank you for taking a chance on me, for believing that a simple cowboy could make you happy, for building this life with me. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Thea Bennett, and I will love you until my last breath. And I will love you beyond that, Thea replied, squeezing his hand, into whatever comes next. They walked back to the house together, their fingers intertwined. Inside, Samuel was playing the piano Thea had insisted they buy years ago, and Emma was singing along. Robert was teaching his nieces and nephews a complicated card game. The house was full of noise and life and love. This was what Thea had dreamed of during those dark days after Samuel's death, though she had not been able to articulate it then. Not just security or respectability, but a true home, a place where she was valued and loved, where her past did not define her, where she could be fully herself. As the years went on and they grew older together, Russell and Thea remained inseparable. They became grandparents many times over, and their golden wedding anniversary brought an even bigger celebration than their 25th. By then, Russell's hair was white and his hands gnarled with arthritis, but his eyes still lit up whenever Thea entered the room. Thea's auburn hair had faded to gray, and her face was lined with age, but she still moved with grace and purpose. On a warm evening in June, when they were both in their 70s, they sat on the porch as they had done thousands of times before. The ranch was now run by Samuel and his sons, though Russell still liked to check on the cattle and offer advice. Thea had finally given up most of the household work to Samuel's wife, though she still cooked Sunday dinner for the whole extended family every week. I am tired, Russell said suddenly, not in a bad way, just ready to rest. Thea felt a chill of premonition, but forced herself to speak calmly. We have earned our rest, I think. We have. Russell reached for her hand, his grip still strong despite his age. Thea, if something happens to me, I need you to promise me something. Do not talk like that. Promise me you will not mourn forever, that you will keep living, keep laughing. You did it once before, after Samuel died. You can do it again if you have to. I do not want to think about it, Thea said, her voice breaking. I know, but promise me anyway. I promise, she whispered. But you have to promise me the same thing. If I go first, you cannot follow me right away out of sadness. You have to stay for our children and grandchildren. I promise, Russell said. They sat in silence, both thinking thoughts they did not voice. As it turned out, they did not have to keep their promises for many years yet. Russell lived to be 79, dying peacefully in his sleep on a winter night with Thea beside him. He simply did not wake up one morning, slipping away from life as gently as one might slip into a warm bath. Thea mourned him deeply, but not desperately. She had loved him too well to dishonor that love with hysteria or self-destruction. She knew he would want her to keep living, to keep loving their children and grandchildren, to keep finding joy in the everyday miracles of life. She lived 4 more years after Russell's death, staying active and engaged. She taught Emma's daughter to quilt, shared recipes with Samuel's wife, and told stories about the old days to anyone who would listen. She spoke often of Russell, keeping his memory alive not through tears but through laughter and love. On a spring morning when the wildflowers were blooming across the hills, Thea woke feeling strange and light. She knew with the certainty that comes at the end of a long life that her time had come. She called for Samuel, and when he came running, she smiled at him. "It is all right," she said. "I am ready. Your father is waiting for me." "Mother, do not say that. We will send for the doctor. No need, sweet boy. I have had a wonderful life, full of more love than I ever dreamed possible. Take care of your brother and sister. Take care of this ranch. And remember that love is always worth the risk, always worth the pain." She closed her eyes then, and with her children gathered around her bed, Thea Bennett slipped away to wherever Russell had gone before her. They buried her next to Russell on the hill overlooking the ranch, beneath a simple stone that read, "Thea Bennett, beloved wife, mother and friend, she loved deeply." The ranch stayed in the family for generations, passed down from Samuel to his sons and their sons after them. The story of Russell and Thea became family legend, told and retold at gatherings and holidays. How she had come to Nevada as a rejected mail order bride, shunned for being a widow. How Russell had given her a chance when no one else would. How he had said those magic words that changed both their lives. Widows know how to love deep. And through all the years and all the retellings, the essence of the story remained the same. It was a story about second chances and the courage to risk your heart again. It was a story about seeing past the surface to the person beneath. It was a story about building something beautiful out of rejection and pain. But most of all, it was a story about love. Real, deep, lasting love that transcends gossip and judgment, hardship and loss. The kind of love that makes you brave enough to start over, strong enough to face whatever comes, and grateful for every single moment you get to spend with the person who chose you when others turned away. In the end, that is what Thea and Russell had given each other and what they left behind for their descendants. Not just a successful ranch or material wealth, but the example of what true partnership looks like. They had shown that it is never too late to find love, that your past does not have to define your future, and that sometimes the best things come from the hardest beginnings. Their story lived on, whispered between couples on wedding nights, shared with children struggling through heartbreak, passed down as proof that fairy tales can come true even in the harsh reality of the Wild West. And somewhere, if you believe in such things, Russell and Thea were still sitting on that porch together, watching stars come out over Nevada, their hands intertwined, their love as strong in death as it had been in life. Because that is what happens when widows love deep, when cowboys speak the truth, and when two broken people find each other and decide to become whole together. They create something eternal, something that death cannot touch and time cannot diminish. They create a love story for the ages.